Welcome to another episode of Truth Unveiled, where we dive deep into the pivotal moment in history that shapes the world we live in today. I'm your host, and in this episode, we're going to explore one of the darkest chapters in U.S. economic history, the Great Depression. Specifically, we're going to examine the role bankers played in allowing this catastrophe to unfold, and why it might not have been just an accident, but a calculated event with distinct goals. So sit back, listen closely, and let's uncover the truth behind the Great Depression. To understand the Great Depression, we need to rewind the clock to the roaring 1920s. The economy was booming, and the stock market was reaching unprecedented heights. Everyone wanted a piece of the pie. People were borrowing money to invest in stocks, believing that the market could only go up. It was a time of excess, optimism, and unbridled confidence. However, lurking beneath the surface of prosperity was a dangerous financial bubble created by loose credit and rampant speculation. And at the heart of this bubble, the bankers. Bankers allowed and some argue actively encouraged reckless borrowing. Why? Because it was profitable. When banks lend money, they charge interest. The more people borrowed, the more the banks stood to gain. By the late 1920s, many banks were intertwined with investment firms, blurring the line between responsible lending and risky speculation. Bankers pushed for more loans, knowing full well that these investments were being funneled into an increasing fragile stock market. So was this carelessness or intentional? To answer that, let's explore the goals these bankers might have had. First, we need to consider control. By inflating the financial bubble, banks were able to consolidate economic power. When the stock market crash of 1929 finally hit, the wealthiest individuals and banks were able to buy up assets for pennies on the dollar. Small investors lost everything, but the large financial institution had already prepared for the downturn. And this led us to the idea of wealth consolidation. Many historians argue that the Great Depression allowed a small group of bankers and elites to seize an even greater share of the nation's wealth. The collapse wiped out the middle class, while those at the top had enough resources to weather the storm and come out stronger. But there's more. Some conspiracy theories suggest that the Great Depression was a way to shift the balance of global financial power. This wasn't just about the US. It was about reshaping the world economy. By allowing the system to collapse, the global banking elite could create a more centralized financial system, paving the way for institutions like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank, which would later control economies on a global scale. Now, let's address the Federal Reserve. The role of the Fed in the Great Depression is often scrutinized because it failed to prevent the collapse. Some argue it was a passive observer, but others believe it was more complicit. The Federal Reserve tight monetary policy in the years leading up to the crash certainly didn't help. They reduced the money supply when the economy needed liquidity the most. Why would they do this? One possible answer is that they wanted to drive the economy into a crisis. By forcing businesses to fail and shrinking the money supply, they could usher in new regulations and centralize control over the banking system. We can't overlook the goal of restructuring. Out of the ashes of the Great Depression came sweeping changes. In 1933, the Glass-Steagall Act was passed to separate commercial and investment banking. This was a direct response to the recklessness that had been allowed to fester in the financial system. But this regulation also allowed bankers and political elites to reshape the economy to their advantage, creating a system where they could thrive in a more controlled environment. Was the Great Depression a mistake? Or was it an orchestrated event to gain more control, consolidate wealth, and reshape the global financial system? That's the question we're left with today. What we do know is that while millions suffered, the select few emerged more powerful than ever. As we reflect on lessons of the Great Depression, let's not forget that history has a tendency to repeat itself. The 2008 financial crisis showed us that bankers and financial institutions still wield immense power and can steer the world into economic turmoil. The question we need to ask ourselves is, how do we prevent history from repeating itself? Thank you for tuning to the Truth Unveiled. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. Stay curious, stay informed, and until next time, remember that understanding the past is the key to shaping a better future.